Stanford University.
Session 4 has as its theme exploring scientific questions for future research on compassion and altruism. So we're interested in this session not only to pick up on perhaps some of the themes that we've already spoken about, but we're really interested in focusing our attention on the future, ways in which we can ensure the growth and enrichment of this field of research, looking at next steps, particular areas that might be especially valuable. We've already had a few indications of that, especially in this last session. We have 3 new guests, hardly guests in this case, each one of whom has much to contribute. The first is James Doty, MD, Director of the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education, CCARE, who is doing all of this good work. He's at Stanford University and clinical professor of neurosurgery at the Stanford University School of Medicine. And we have Paul Ekman, who's professor of psychology emeritus at the University of California in San Francisco. And his research on facial expression and body movement began already in 1954, continued for a lifetime. I hate to say the dates, but you're looking well. A seminal approach to behavior launched hard at work on a compendium, I hear. Dacher Keltner will not be with us this afternoon. He has a family emergency. But we are very fortunate that one of his students, Emiliana Simon Thomas, PhD, will be with us. She's done postdoctoral research with Dacher Keltner at the University of California, Berkeley Social Interaction Laboratory, and has recently joined CCARE as a senior scientist working on developing a comprehensive standard measure of compassion and collaborating on future compassion cultivation training studies. So welcome to all 3 of you. There are going to be no presentations during this session. It's entirely a free-flowing conversation concerning the future and some of the themes that have been announced through the previous presentations and discussions that we'd like to go deeper into. But I'm going to give the floor first to Jim Doty.
Again, thank you all for your attention today, and thank you again so much, Your Holiness, for being with us today. How's that? How's that? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Thank you for being here today, and thank you again, Your Holiness. In this conversation we've had today, I know a lot of information has been presented to you that has spanned the fields of economics, to the potential implications of altering the brain, utilizing alteration in genes and use of different wavelengths of light potentially to turn on and off genes, to this compassion cultivation training program. I think all of us would like potentially for you to sit here and tell us what you think some of the important areas that have been presented today, your thoughts on those, and your thoughts on where this work could lead to, or perhaps your thoughts on which directions we should go for the future.
I think broadly, I think this morning, as I mentioned earlier, even for academic level, I think modern science mainly come from West. So traditionally, in the West, of course, the Judeo-Christian religion is the about the kasota, taking care about mind. So there, so because you see the faith towards Creator, towards God, is the sort of the real faith. That also is the immense benefit to many people without thinking these complications, or simply it's a single-pointed faith towards God. It provides inner peace, hope, like that. Whereas in Asia, in India, mainly India, so different sort of traditions develop within the country. So the non-theistic, mainly Jainism and Buddhism, so it bound to take care about mind, one's own mind. It's not sufficient to just put faith. So therefore, in order to tackle mind, you have to know the mind more detail. So 1,000 years, some kind of the inner science already there developed. And then through centuries, many practitioners, many scholars work on it. So a lot of development there. So in the West, modern science, the background, the Judeo-Christian background, so you see, not much sort of relevant, the kasota.
Complex analysis of the mind.
Or say the shaping our own mind. So now, I think Western science is really now because of the reaching a high level or deeper level. So I think it is really wonderful. The science now becoming something like complete external matters and the internal mind because of the both field, because of the sufficient knowledge. And these knowledge, if Buddha or Jesus Christ there, we can ask them. But such person not there. So we have to carry research work. So these, I think these sort of research or these sort of I think discussion or exploration. Of course, these different religious centers, Buddhist center or Hindu centers, also important, but mainly in academic field. Academic centers. That I, right from the beginning, I always feel that's very, very important. So therefore, this program, please carry continuously. And usually I use it telling people, in material field, in any case, there is limitation. If you become millionaire, billionaire, if you got the 100 million, or 1,000 million, trillion, 100 trillion, 1,000 trillion, your greed is still not satisfied. Want more. So more anxiety, more jealousy, more suspicion come. So inner peace of mind will not get from external means. And in any way, someone owned the whole world, still discontent. Moon or Mars. Then further, other galaxies. And anyway, your life, 100 years. So there's anyway there is limitation. Now, internal matter, mind is concerned, formless, not depend on kasota, solid thing. So it can develop infinite way. So those fields which in any way limitation, better to content. Those fields where no limitation, then should not content. But usually, we just opposite. About spiritual matter or mental matter, something because with the mind, we contented. So far. If the matter is concerned, external matter, we every year see because of the further sort of because of research work, and found some new things. So I'm very, very happy. You see, like you and these people, really now opening in science world. Yes, there is certain thing which we not yet explore fully. I think that's very good.
A question or two from Emiliana.
Yes, so Your Holiness, you've learned this morning that we as a field have realized several methods for trying to measure compassion, trying to assess people's experience of compassion. We use something called self-report. How are you feeling? Compassion, 1 to 10. For you, 10. We look at behavior. We see whether people give or share. We look at heroic behavior, like Phil Zimbardo. My esteemed colleague, Dr. Keltner, has pioneered a technique of looking at a cardiovascular response called vagal tone and looked at its relationship to compassion. He's also looked at certain social circumstances, like socioeconomic status, that relate to compassion. We heard from Erica Rosenberg about certain beliefs that are part of compassion, like a sense of common humanity, a sense of similarity between yourself and others. And finally, we heard from Brian and Bill Harbaugh this morning, Brian Knutson, about several patterns of brain activation that are associated with reinforcing compassion, with motivating compassion. One of the missions of CCARE is to, in collaboration with other centers that are focused on examining compassion, is to develop a standard, validated measurement of compassion that can be made available to everyone so that all of our research can be understood comprehensively and in an integrated fashion. Do you have, Your Holiness, any recommendations for aspects or phenomena that you think are important to the arising and falling and carryover of the compassionate response that you think we need to include in our measure?
I don't. Unless I think I spent months in laboratory. Then while you are carrying some sort of experiment, I may develop some idea. But otherwise, I have nothing to say.
I think you're probably invited to the laboratory.
We have a spot for you. We have a place for you to come and stay in our laboratory for months.
Perhaps you'd like to make a comment or a question.
His point is that unless he has the opportunity to sit down with some of you and go through a detailed discussion of what the specifics of the experiments and what are the kind of points being included as part of the measurement, he wouldn't be able to just.
When we have our measure, we'll arrange that meeting.
Just a comment, though. Just a comment. This is critically important because as this field is evolving, for it to mature in any way, we have to have measures that are validated, consistent, so that we can tell from experiment to experiment what this means. Because if every time we write an article, we are using one measure here, one measure there, how are we ever going to have any consistencies? It's always comparing apples and oranges. So my feeling is, and I think all of us, is that one of the critical aspects of the work that we're doing is actually creating this measure.
Well, just a couple of points before I get to what I wanted to say. We've got to have a standard measure, but scientists are very contentious people. So it's not an easy matter, even if you get a great measure, to convince everyone else that they should use your measure. So you would have a better chance, I believe, of developing an accepted standard measure if it was developed by a team representing multiple universities rather than one.
Well, first of all, that's an excellent point. We've actually got a number of academic institutions, and in fact, all over the country and the world, who are actually signed on to this already. So that was always the plan, because there are some parts of the country where information only goes out, it doesn't come in, if you know what I mean. So we absolutely want this so that there is buy-in from all parties, because if you're a part of this research from the start and you have ownership, and right from the beginning there is respect for your opinion, which is to some extent all about what we're talking of today, then it's much easier for all of us to work together.
But let me begin with what I was preparing to say. First, to thank Stanford University. Actually, I was on the staff here 45 years ago in political science, of all things. But thank you, Stanford. Thank you, CCARE. Thank you, my dear friend, the Dalai Lama. What a privilege it's been to get to know you, a life-changing privilege. I'm so grateful. And so is my wife and my children.
And your colleagues.
Well, you never care much about them. I wanted to raise a couple of things that I had not had a chance to talk to you about and see what you think. Brian described, I think very well, compassionate feelings as feeling the experience of someone else's suffering. And that's all something that when we talk about opening the heart, we're opening the heart to that. And Bill Herbo talked about, he's not interested in the feeling stuff, it's the action. Show me the action, our economist, yes? Now, we presume, and it's probably often the case, that the feelings precede the action, but I've become convinced from a number of examples that I've examined that you can get compassionate action without it being preceded by compassionate feelings. So the first question I want to ask you is, do you agree with that? But before I get to that, what I would like to suggest is there are multiple paths to compassion. Developing compassionate feelings is one path, but not the only path. If we look at the Buddhist concept of worldview, that is another, in Western terms, we would say that's attitudes, values, and beliefs. And that in itself, without, and I'm a student of emotion, take emotion out of the way. You don't need it for this path. It's your values, your beliefs that cause you to act. And the act is irresistible because that's what you believe that you must do and should do. And that So do you, if that is the case, this is the last part of this question, then it means that education, like Linda Darling, offers us a route for that path. Now, I'm really a believer in multiple paths. So it's not trying to belittle one path versus another, but to saying, do you think there are multiple paths and that some people can engage in a life of compassion, not preceded by having gone the compassionate feeling route?
Di chen dunga na wala me se lo jangje ni ngi ge ga tablam chik dang ta ya tablam ga she ni ji de ge chen bo yin bo da rang da shen chung bo da de nang be de da shen nyam je so le che be na shen gi dunga de su su me se bo me se ke ma she bo che so yo lam la ma de ma che lo jangje
지 닝지 과래 닝지 깨래 이집이 바로 동에는 지 소소 서로 가야 됩니다. 얘네 가서 손에 변 산지 좀 된대래. 니 생각이요. 동에 대해서 하고 있어. 되게 영심 말해. 배나 배를 가서 그래. 니 새로야. 다 똑배 새로 그럴 레벨이나. 다디가다 intellectually. 바로 동에 나와. 또 동에 규 나와. 다 들었습니다. 이 소동에 배시하면 아다는 넘겨 안다. 닝지 the tissue so 동네 la mikbe 닝시 거 마도 동네 차차르시면 닝시 시가 맞다. So that the page shukche so intellectual samurang tono
Generally, the Buddhist understanding does not presuppose that in order to have a compassion.
Firstly, the compassion is something like sort of desire to overcome suffering
of
others. So now here differences. The suffering, there are three kinds of suffering. Usually when we use the word of suffering, we just refer to the first kind level of suffering. So suffering of change, which is a worldly sort of the pleasure or happiness. These also second level of suffering. Then third suffering, so long negative emotions or so long misconception there, sooner or later you will suffer. So these are not on the suffering experience, feeling, but rather ultimate source of suffering. So concerned to overcome this ultimate source of suffering. So they are the
So at that level of compassion, then feeling doesn't come in. It's really more from an understanding and recognition of the cause of suffering, and based upon that, a wish for that person to be free from suffering arises. So there is no feeling root. But His Holiness was earlier making the point that when we even talk about empathy in the Buddhist sense, it does not necessarily, entail a kind of emotional resonance. That you are not expected to experience what the other person is experiencing, but the feeling root might includes some kind of sense of distress at the sight of others. So this is an ordinary level of compassion, where the compassion is focused, directed to an evident acute suffering that you are seeing in front of you. Whereas there can be other types of compassion, as he explained, which are more cultivated on the basis of deep understanding of the causes and conditions of suffering. And on that basis, when compassion arises, it's a more kind of reasoned product and does not need to go through the feeling route.
Good.
So it's only saying, you're saying good is because it seems to, support your thesis.
It supports people I've observed who are engaging in compassionate behavior, and I can see from talking with them no evidence that they went through a feeling route. it's more an intellectual worldview is probably the best way.
Intellectual worldview. Did it?
Yes?
That's a good way of putting it.
So let me take this a step further, just one step further. You said when we were off stage that compassion is generalized. Okay? Now, I think it's conceivable that compassion can be a trait, a personality trait. And if it is, where did it come from? Are there some people who are born with a proclivity to develop, all things being equal, a compassionate personality? You told me years ago, go talk to Richard Moore. You said, he practices compassion. I talk about it, was what you said. I went to see Richard Moore, who at 14 was shot by a British policeman and was blinded. And Richard is total forgiveness. He didn't have to work for it. He was compassionate before he was shot. That was his life. And you asked Richard, why, how could this be? He said, it was my mother, but three siblings who had the same mother, who all spoke of her being equally loving, they hate this policeman. Okay? Yeah, they hate the person. They hate the policeman who shot Richard. So do you think it would be profitable for us to investigate people who, without training, without any special preparation, are leading compassionate lives? Do you think we could learn from them things that would be useful to developing their clones? It's another path.
There could be some, special benefits, but he only says he doesn't know. But he was wondering whether there could be some genetic level explanation of these differences.
But of course, from the Buddhist viewpoint, and also the many sort of religious tradition which believe rebirth, now that theory now involved here. That's out of scientific work.
Off limits.
Huh? How's that?
You raised the genetic, that we should look at the family histories, we should look at the backgrounds of such people, because they exist. Not enough of them exist, but they're not as rare as a Mozart.
And I think cultural heritage, culture, atmosphere makes differences. I think, generally speaking, Tibetan, generally speaking, more compassionate, more peaceful, more gentle. Even if many Chinese who visit Tibet, they also find that. And of course, some tourists also. So I don't think any differences, generally, because of genetic level, I don't think differences. But that is mainly the generation to generation sort of way of life or cultural heritage. That also makes differences. These not necessarily come from gene, a genetic level, or not necessarily through training, but whole sort of way of life, whole sort of, because of the cultural heritage.
Cultural atmosphere.
Like that.
Paul, could I respond to that really quickly? In Dakar's lab, a couple of his graduate students did a really clever study looking at a variant of an oxytocin gene. And oxytocin is a neuropeptide that's deeply involved in maternal nurturing and supporting breastfeeding behaviors, things like that. There was a significant difference in this oxytocin gene variant in cooperative and altruistic behavior as a function of which variant the different groups possessed, where people who were homogeneous for AA of this type were more altruistic, people that were GG were less altruistic, people who were AG were unpredictable, and it seemed to be that there was a greater responsibility of the environment and life experience in that regard. And that was just on students again, college students.
Perhaps before we go any further, we should thank all the university undergraduates who've been the guinea pigs.
psychology research 망부지.
I think one of the interesting things that has been found in regard to the study of happiness, though, is that it does seem to be that people do have, if you will, a thermometer which can be adjusted. Now, they may only be able to adjust it to a certain point, and unable to do that, whether there are any other methods used to do that, that they're sort of stuck at a max. But I think the key point is, and I believe it will be relevant to compassion, is that probably no one in this room except His Holiness has their thermometer at the highest level. Our challenge is to get each of our thermometer at least to the highest level that we possibly can. In regard actually to the comments that Paul was making, it's actually interesting because we talk about this cultivation of compassion. We talk about, as he said himself, and when he thanked His Holiness, he commented on, "My wife and my child, thank you." And I think this is an interesting point because our tendency is we want to see the effect on the person. I suggest that we should do work on examining the impact on those around you. And I think that would be a very interesting path to take. What are your thoughts?
저지당 가서 당한 줄 알아 들어다 두월에는 메신 수련을 주시듯이 지간도 쉬어요. 좀 밑에 나 직지다 리지처럼 직다 룡아 직지터네. And 낭삼 보야지. 그 유름부 딱지잖아요.
With relation to talking about measurement, in the Buddhist text, there are references to signs, external signs.
라마 딱지셔야 돼. 라마 딱지셔야 캐치버리스. 다 라마 그래서 딱지셔버스는 치톨이게 제 말이 간다. 롱도그 연대 가리에메다 디디 컨더스타워스는 유름부 질룡아 직질 때네.
So this is in the context of a student seeking for a qualified teacher, and advice is given that you should not choose someone on the basis of how impressive he looks or how high the throne he's sitting on is, but rather whether or not he or she possesses the necessary qualities that you are seeking to cultivate. And that needs to be done on the basis of a sustained observation of the person, on the basis of the way in which the person speaks, the way in which the person carries himself, the behavior, and so on. So there is a saying that on the basis of external signs, one needs to infer and the internal qualities.
But still, you see, you cannot measure 100%. Almost rather.
Approximately.
Approximately, you see, we can judge the inner depth of experiences. And of course, knowledge, more discussion, we know the other's knowledge. But then real experience, say because of the long period examine, and particularly that person passing through difficult
Challenges.
then sometimes it's provocations are the cash relation.
And in some cases, in fact, more kind of provocation might be helpful to provoke the person, put them in a challenging situations.
I thought we were trying to get rid of anger.
그래서 그건 좀 뭐지? 또 남겨요 말해서.
So there is a story. I think you may have heard.
So there's a story about a meditator meditating in a cave, and someone walks by and asks him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm meditating." And he said, "What are you meditating on?" "I'm meditating on patience." So the other person says, "In that case, go to hell." And then the meditator immediately responds, "You go to hell."
So without that provocation, because it looks very good meditator, the provocation, then you see shows his real nature. So that's important.
I think, Paul, you have some comment.
10 years ago, in Dharamsala, when you asked for, I remember that you said, "Is this just going to be good talk, or is something going to happen? Are we going to do something to try to change people's emotional lives?" And Anne Harrington, who was at that meeting, who you know well, who's on the board of Mind and Life. I think she's still on the board of Mind and Life. And this relates to what you said. Anne said, because we talked about, well, what are we going to measure to see whether the training we're going to develop is going to be of benefit? And this is relevant to getting a standardized set of measures of the benefits of compassion training. Anne said, if you don't measure and show that it improves their relationships with their children and their intimate partner, it's worthless. Okay? Quite extreme, but I think really right on the money. I shouldn't use a metaphor. Right, exactly right. That is the important thing, is we change how people deal with each other in a way that people appreciate. And that, if we can't do that, then what are we doing with, what does the compassion mean? It should be, but it's harder methodology. It's an old social psychology, observational methodology. It's used in marital research and not much else. But it really has a place here, and I hope it gets incorporated.
Yeah, so another thing I thought was important to think about, Your Holiness, is when we have looked at all this evidence about compassionate responding, and this relates to what Paul was just talking about, we've really heard biological evidence about the motivations and incentives for being compassionate, and there's been a big focus on the reward system and the extent to which the warm glow or carryover or blue light will make us more compassionate or more pro-social. Incredibly important work. I'm also wondering what you think about the focusing or trying to shift the focus also towards the core caring dimension of compassion, the extent to which humans and many of our predecessor species possess a basic nurturing urge, a system, a biological system that supports our interest in the well-being of conspecifics. It's not something that receives that much attention in the literature, and it's something that I'd really love to see worked on. I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
제와 저만 지간다 비게다 고 잠들지 디톨이야 단다부터 저리기 돈에 제바시라 숙침부게 연구민도스 되는 인지 나로야 전동안 나오면서 동샘 찍체 양 디실이야 파나올이야 지금 니 아까서 인지로서
제버스 붙이죠.
델리아 면
제시
방법에서 제시 방법 하려면도 다 걸려 지금 제월로 제 닝제월로 저러다 아고 닝제 세르지 디기 자세 델리아 미세티민도스 제바세들다 제바 델리아 디안 리서치에 대해 좀 간에 작용해서 닝지다 고니엘
I think yesterday also I mentioned one occasion the distinction, the love or compassion with mixture, mixed with attachment. That kind of sort of compassion can, towards your friend, people who
close to you.
who close or who nice to you. That is very much mixed with attachment. So that kind of compassion is biased, limited compassion. So that compassion actually obstacle for unbiased compassion. So unbiased compassion, not mixed with attachment, detach, then develop sense of compassion. That compassion reach towards your enemy, or that reach, or that extend entire sentient being. So that also, I think, one time, one scientist, one Chilean scientist, physicist, so at one meeting, he actually mentioned, expressed, he, being as a scientist or physicist, he should not attach attachment towards his own scientific field. So when he mentioned that, I also felt, oh, that's very important. I am Buddhist, but I should not develop attachment towards Buddhism. So here, you see, when I develop attachment, then my mind becomes biased. So with too much attachment with one's own religion, then there is tendency to disrespect of other religion. Your sort of faith towards your own religion is not sort of objective, too much attachment. So that's, I think, very important distinction. Genuine compassion and compassion which biological factor and very much mixed with attachment. This, I think, we must make distinction. So in future, some sort of also research what differences at the brain level. The genuine compassion when person who have some experience, then while he or she experiencing that unbiased compassion, or another person just this kind of love or compassion towards his or her family member, that I think also worthwhile some experiment, right? Research on what's the differences in brain. So usually it's a hard joke. I'm usually telling people the tear is physical response, the cause and the emotional level. The emotion, painful sort of emotion, a painful sort of some pain, and very much sort of sad tear come. Or overjoyous, very happy. Again, sometimes tear come. So this poor organ, this eye, no ability to distinction the cause level, big differences. One overjoy, one very sad, but response from the body same. So if this I, physical, quite sort of clever, and the tear come due to, the overjoys should come right eye or left eye. Then very sad things come, then other side. Then we can say, through physical sort of expression, we can judge the emotion. So therefore, this scientists who try to explain mind through brain research, I do not believe. It to some extent, yes, certainly, but I think in deeper level, I don't think. Physical level, very rough, gross. Mind, very subtle. And within mind, of course, eye consciousness, very gross. Coarse
level.
Coarse level. Very much related with brain and eye organs like that. But then the mental sort of mind, which come follow.
Follow after the sensory experience.
That's mind now. There also is many different levels. Awakening state mind, and dream state mind, deep sleep mind. There are many differences. So I think one day I also casually talk with Richard Davidson. The movement, brain cell, very fast, but slower than light, isn't it? Speed. No? I think mind, even faster than light. So a little difficult.
Thank you, Your Holiness. We're coming to our last few minutes. We have potentially 3 contributions. 2 are scheduled, but I'd like to begin by seeing if Your Holiness would like to make any final comments. Then I will follow with a short integration, and then Jim will conclude the program. Do you have anything that you would like to add as a final?
Usually, you see, my nature is such. So whatever something felt here, just express. No kasurda. This portion I should state now. This portion I should state later. No such plan.
Said everything. I hardly need to say anything more. But I've been asked to just give a few minutes of a kind of retrospect on what it is we've been through, which has been something of a really great and special nature, I think, for all of us here, especially for those of us, of course, who are on the stage or in the living room, as you remember, to have shared this time with you. I love that question that you posed, Paul, is something going to happen? Many of us have had the great privilege to be in dialogue with Your Holiness over many years, a kind of camaraderie and friendship as common seekers in a living room context. But now it's clear that things are happening. Places like CCARE, University of Wisconsin, Richie Davidson's laboratory, the project in Emory, and there are many other smaller initiatives that are picking up on just this kind of development. And most of them go back to your good example in talking with us, being open-minded in ways which really encouraged us to take up these collaborations around questions of compassion, attention, mental imagery, a whole array of mental subjects. What that has meant to me is that there's been a kind of new marriage that's taken place. Science and spirituality, or science and the inner life, have been at odds with one another over many years. And it seems to me that your commitment to empiricism, to the data, your commitment to science, your commitment to reason, as well as to the values and aspirations of your culture and tradition, have really set an example for how science can also work together with these values. So we're striving for, you could say, a reintegration of the inner and the outer worlds, of the mental life and the physical life in ways that we have not had before. And that this also holds up the possibility, as we heard from Linda Darling-Hammond, the possibility of education in a new way, an education for children and also for those college students we keep talking about, which is more integrated as well, which doesn't only educate towards the material well-being of those individuals, but also for their inner well-being, that the heart as well as the brain is actually addressed in a way which is given equal emphasis so that their own lives are filled with greater meaning, purpose, and direction. And that this could be one of the highest aspirations of education, to provide for our children and for our young adults. And I couldn't help but think of that confidence you have in the mind. The mind has infinite, unlimited potential. That whenever we look at a young child or a college student across the table from us, we realize that this young mind has an infinite possibility. It's so encouraging, so expansive. I also think of your friend and colleague here, Tunchin Jimpa, who has quietly served you and all of the work that you've done, but here in Stanford has found a kind of home for his own work, his work in developing a contemplative curriculum that really helps in the development of compassion. It is, I think, a gift from Tibet to the US and to the world, for which we thank you. I also am really proud of the good scientists, the scientists who've really applied themselves, their energy, their enthusiasm, their technique, all of that, even asking the hard questions. You think you got a result, examine it a second time, go still deeper. They also have joined in this project with full enthusiasm, and it's great to see the hard work of talented scientists brought to bear on these great problems, and with great subtlety. I think of Karl Dieseroth's response to your question concerning anger, because it, on the one hand, it gave a scientific response, a particular region of the brain, yes, we understand this, but is it possible that anger is also righteous? We have to be careful that it's not that we don't take away the motivation for doing well by somebody else, or its use in the arts. So the subtlety of analysis.
Right.
Finally, I noticed yesterday you kept waving bye-bye. And I know we're all getting old, but I wanted to remind you of a prayer that I know has a special place in your heart, which goes like this: so long as space remains, so long as sentient beings remain, I will remain. In order to help, in order to serve, in order to make my own contribution. So we hope that this prayer is fulfilled and that you will remain. As long as space remains, as long as we as sentient beings remain, that you also will remain. And that
if I remain. Of course, from the Buddhist viewpoint, you see life after life.
I think you have
Otherwise,
a way
you see, if I remain forever, then the whole galaxies disappear. Just a single person remain here. No use.
But I think we can join you in this prayer, which is really a prayer of service, right? A prayer which speaks to the possibility of the human being to have compassion, as you so beautifully described, not only for oneself or for the individual across oneself, but that compassion can become generalized, that it becomes one where we all join you in saying, so long as space remains, so long as sentient being remains, we will remain in order to help, in order to serve, in order to make our own contributions. So we join you in that prayer.
Thank you. Thank you much. Thank you.
Wait, we're not.
Yes.
I just want to make a closing comment. You don't have to stay.
Thank you.
I hope all of you have found this dialogue worthwhile. I think you did. Science and technology have the potential to profoundly impact the human landscape, taking us to its deepest valleys of human suffering or to its highest peaks of human potential or transformation. That which will stop us from choosing the former is the cultivation of compassion. The recognition that our family or tribe, which our evolution to date as a species has limited our view, is not just our mother, father, aunt, uncle, sister, or brother. Our home is not just what we can see immediately around us. Every human is part of one family. Every part of Earth is our home. I believe that the journey of those of us at CCARE and those scientists working in this field around the world have embarked upon a path that can take us to that far shore where each of us recognizes that the other is our brother. And then, in fact, the world is his home, where there are no barriers that separate us, but in fact, profound forces that bind us. I hope the work which you have gotten but a glimpse of today gives you a hint of that possibility, and I believe now that we are at a tipping point where the recognition that love and compassion, as His Holiness says, are no longer luxuries if our species is to survive, but necessities. Your Holiness, I thank you for your inspiration to not just me and everyone in this room and those watching on the internet, but to the hundreds of millions of people around the world who you have inspired to look at others and see themselves. Thank you.
I think now a few decades, the main reason why we, I think since few decades, why we gather mainly for certain sort of academic work. But that also, you see, create personal, genuine friendship. So once we become close friend, that friendship will remain till our death. So I appreciate.
From one friend to another.
Thank you.
May we work together through all lifetimes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Your hand is shaking. Take care. Take care. Take care.
I see you in Australia.
Okay. Okay. I have one question. One question. Why you see this? Very colorful. Why?
Color.
러시아 주식 편집관인 저거. The science with too much 가져올.
Saying that if you are much younger, that would be suitable.
Age is in the mind.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. 그렇지. 자, 입을 두시체. Thank you. So thank you. Thank you. So thank you. Thank you once more. Thank you. 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 Take care. Take care. Thank you.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.